7. Powerful Buddhist Teachings for an Unbreakable Mind. Since the earliest times of human history, people have searched for ways to master the mind, to calm the heart, and to face life's storms with courage and clarity. Among the many spiritual paths that humanity has cultivated, Buddhism has stood out as a profound and practical philosophy of life, offering teachings that not only guide us in the search for liberation, but also provide timeless wisdom for cultivating an unshakable mind. When we speak about an unbreakable mind, we do not mean a mind that refuses to feel or a heart that is made of stone. Rather, we speak of a mind that can withstand suffering, disappointment, and change without collapsing. A mind like a mountain, strong, grounded, and yet capable of being gentle, compassionate, and flexible. Buddhist philosophy is not only about monastic life or retreating from the world. It's a path that can be integrated into the ordinary rhythm of life, into our work, our relationships, our daily struggles, and our moments of joy. Its teachings are practical, logical, and accessible, addressing the very nature of human suffering and providing clear methods for overcoming it. These methods are not temporary fixes, they are deep transformations that reshape how we perceive ourselves and the world around us. The goal of Buddhism has always been to help people awaken to the truth of existence. At the heart of its wisdom lies the understanding that suffering is inevitable, but unnecessary suffering, the kind born of clinging, resistance, and ignorance, can be transcended. This is why the teachings of the Buddha, when applied with sincerity, can forge a mind that does not shatter under pressure. Instead, it learns to bend like bamboo in the wind, to accept change as natural, and to find strength in compassion and clarity. In this journey, we will explore 7 powerful teachings of Buddhism that can help any seeker cultivate a mind of resilience and serenity. Each teaching is a doorway into a deeper understanding of life. Each is a tool to build inner strength, emotional balance, and clarity of thought. And while each teaching is ancient, it remains astonishingly relevant to the modern human experience, where stress, distraction, and uncertainty dominate much of our existence. The following exploration is not theoretical, it is practical. You will see how these teachings can be lived, how they can be integrated into the challenges you face today, and how they can guide you in becoming a person who meets life not with fear, but with unbreakable calm. Now let us begin with the first teaching. 1. The power of impermanence. Impermanence is one of the foundational teachings of Buddhism, often expressed in the term anicca. To truly grasp impermanence is to understand that everything in life, whether joy or sorrow, wealth or poverty, health or illness, is constantly changing. Nothing remains the same. At first glance, this truth can seem frightening. After all, humans tend to crave stability. We want to hold on to what we love and avoid what we fear. Yet impermanence is not only a reality, it is also a gift, for without it growth, renewal, and transformation would not be possible. Consider for a moment the cycle of nature. The flowers bloom in spring, wither in summer's heat, fall in autumn and die in winter only to return again. Mountains erode, rivers shift, stars are born and die. Impermanence is not just a concept, it is the pulse of existence itself. The human body is no exception. From the day we are born, we begin to change. Cells regenerate, faces age, emotions shift, and identities transform. Most of our suffering arises when we resist this truth. We cling to youth, beauty, possessions, relationships, and even to our own ideas of who we are. When change inevitably arrives, as it always does, we feel pain, betrayal, or despair. Buddhism teaches that the problem is not impermanence itself, but our refusal to accept it. By learning to embrace impermanence, we begin to free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Let us reflect on relationships. People come into our lives bringing love, friendship, and companionship, but sometimes they leave through distance, conflict, or death. If we cling to the illusion that relationships must last forever, we suffer twice. Once when they change, and again when we resist the change. Yet if we embrace impermanence, we can love more deeply in the present, knowing that each moment is precious because it will not return. Impermanence does not make love meaningless, it makes it sacred. In Buddhism, meditation is often used to directly experience impermanence. When we sit in silence and observe the breath, we notice how each inhalation arises and passes away, followed by an exhalation that also arises and passes away. Thoughts too come and go, some pleasant, some painful, but none remain. By observing the constant flow of mind and body, we begin to realize that clinging is futile. Life is movement. Peace arises not from freezing life in place, but from flowing with its rhythm. This teaching also reshapes how we face suffering. If joy passes, so does pain. If despair comes, it too will leave. Impermanence assures us that no state, however unbearable it may seem, lasts forever. A person grieving the loss of a loved one may feel as though the pain will never end, yet slowly, with time, the weight lessens. This is not betrayal, it is the natural unfolding of impermanence. Understanding this, we can face suffering with greater patience, trusting that the storm will pass. In practical life, accepting impermanence allows us to let go more easily. When a job ends, we see it as part of the cycle of change, making space for new opportunities. When failure arrives, we understand it is temporary, a step on the path, not the final destination. Even our emotions become less overwhelming when we know they will shift like clouds drifting across the sky. But impermanence also inspires gratitude. If we know that every moment is fleeting, we begin to cherish the present more fully. Instead of living in the illusion of permanence, we awaken to the beauty of now. A sunrise becomes extraordinary not because it will last forever, but because it won't. A conversation with a loved one becomes sacred because it will not be repeated in the same way. Impermanence, when understood deeply, transforms ordinary experiences into treasures. Some may argue that embracing impermanence leads to detachment or indifference, but Buddhism distinguishes between clinging and genuine appreciation. To cling is to try to freeze life in place. To appreciate is to savor it as it is, without demand. A person who embraces impermanence does not become cold or distant. Instead, they love more freely, without chains. Impermanence also trains the mind in resilience. When we understand that change is constant, we are less shocked when life takes an unexpected turn. We no longer ask, "Why me?" but instead say, "This too is part of life." In this way, impermanence becomes a shield against despair. It does not eliminate pain, but it gives us the strength to endure it with dignity. In the modern world, where uncertainty seems to grow with each passing day, economic crises, climate change, pandemics, political turmoil, the wisdom of impermanence is more vital than ever. We cannot predict the future, but we can train ourselves to flow with change instead of breaking under its weight. The mind that embraces impermanence becomes like water, soft, adaptable, yet powerful enough to carve through stone. Thus, the first great teaching of Buddhism offers us not despair, but liberation. It teaches us that the only constant is change, and that in this change lies both challenge and beauty. By opening our hearts to impermanence, we cultivate flexibility, gratitude, and resilience, the qualities of an unbreakable mind. And if you have found meaning in this reflection, I invite you to continue walking this path of wisdom with me. Subscribe to the channel so that we may keep exploring together these timeless teachings that can transform your life. 2. The nature of suffering, dukkha. From the very beginning of his teaching, the Buddha emphasized one truth that stands at the heart of the human experience. Life, as ordinarily lived, is filled with suffering. This teaching, called dukkha in Pali, is not a pessimistic doctrine meant to depress or discourage us. On the contrary, it is the most compassionate recognition of reality, because only by acknowledging suffering can we begin to transform it. Just as a doctor cannot heal without first diagnosing illness, We cannot free ourselves from pain without first understanding its nature. To deny suffering is to live in illusion. To face it with clarity is the beginning of wisdom. But what exactly did the Buddha mean by suffering? In English, the word often suggests only physical pain or intense emotional distress, yet dukkha is far broader. It encompasses not only obvious suffering such as sickness, loss and conflict, but also the subtle dissatisfaction that runs through ordinary existence. Even when life is going well, there is often a quiet unease, a sense that something is missing, that happiness is slipping away. This, too, is dukkha. At its core, dukkha arises because we live in a world of impermanence, yet we cling to things as though they were permanent. We want pleasure to last forever. We want loved ones never to leave. We want our bodies never to age. But reality refuses to obey these desires, and so disappointment arises. The Buddha's insight was that suffering is not only external, but deeply internal, rooted in the way we grasp at life, the way we demand that reality conform to our wishes. Consider the pursuit of pleasure. A person may enjoy a delicious meal, a new possession, or the thrill of success. In those moments, joy seems secure, but soon the meal is finished, the possession loses its charm, the success fades, and the hunger for more returns. The cycle repeats endlessly: desire, satisfaction, loss, and renewed desire. This cycle is not a flaw in any particular object of pleasure, but in the very nature of clinging itself. Desire promises fulfillment, but fulfillment slips away, leaving us restless. Even in love, dukkha is present. We may fall deeply in love with another person, and for a time, the world feels complete. But soon fear creeps in. The fear of losing them, the fear of change, the fear that love itself may fade. Sometimes we cling so tightly to the person we love that we strangle the very freedom in which love thrives. And if loss comes, as it eventually does in one form or another, the suffering feels unbearable. The Buddha was not condemning love, but pointing out that clinging to permanence in a world of impermanence inevitably brings pain. Suffering also arises from the illusion of self. We construct identities, labels, roles, stories that we believe define who we are. I am successful. I am strong. I am beautiful. I am worthy. But these identities are fragile, dependent on circumstances. When life challenges them, when we lose success, when strength declines, when beauty fades, we feel as though we ourselves are breaking. The Buddha taught that what we call the self is not fixed, but a collection of changing processes. To cling to it as something permanent is to invite suffering. Yet as universal as suffering is, most people spend their lives running from it rather than facing it. We distract ourselves with entertainment, numb ourselves with substances, bury ourselves in work, or blame others for our pain. But these strategies never eliminate suffering. They merely postpone the confrontation. Like shadows, suffering follows us wherever we go until we turn and face it. The courage to face suffering is the first step toward freedom, because once we see its nature clearly, we can begin to loosen its grip. Buddhism offers not only the diagnosis of suffering, but also the promise of liberation. The Four Noble Truths, often called the essence of the Buddha's teaching, provide a complete framework. Suffering exists, suffering has causes, suffering can end, and there is a path leading to its end. This framework is not abstract philosophy, but a practical guide for transforming life. To understand the depth of dukkha, let us examine its forms. The first is obvious suffering: birth, aging, illness, death, grief, and physical pain. These are the universal conditions of existence. No one escapes them, yet even here, the Buddha offered perspective. Though pain is inevitable, suffering is often optional. Physical pain, for example, is real, but much of our torment arises from resisting it, from asking, "Why me?" or imagining it will never end. By facing pain with mindfulness, we lessen its sting. The second form of suffering is the suffering of change. Even pleasant experiences eventually bring pain because they end. The vacation concludes, the friendship shifts, the youth fades. What once brought joy may even become a source of sorrow simply because it is gone. This kind of suffering is subtle but constant, woven into the fabric of everyday life. The third form of suffering is the most subtle, the suffering of conditioned existence itself. This is the unease that arises simply from being caught in the cycle of desire and aversion, from living with a mind that is never fully satisfied. It is the restlessness that keeps us searching, even when we have everything we thought we wanted. It is the gnawing sense that something is missing, even in moments of apparent success. This suffering reveals the depth of the human predicament. As long as we remain bound by ignorance and craving, peace remains elusive. Why does this teaching matter for cultivating an unbreakable mind? Because resilience begins with realism. To build a mind that cannot be broken, we must first stop pretending that life will always go as we wish. We must acknowledge that pain, loss, and disappointment are inevitable companions on the journey. Only then can we prepare ourselves to meet them without fear. To deny suffering is to be fragile. To understand it is to become unshakable. Imagine a soldier who goes to battle unaware of the dangers. The first shot shatters his courage, but a soldier who knows the risks, who has trained for the storm, does not break. Similarly, when we understand dukkha, we are no longer surprised when challenges arise. We see them as part of life, and instead of collapsing, we stand firm. This perspective also transforms our relationship with joy. If we know joy is impermanent, we do not cling to it desperately, nor do we fear its loss. Instead, we savor it fully while it lasts, knowing it is a gift. In this way, joy becomes deeper, more authentic, because it is free from illusion. We no longer demand that happiness be eternal, we appreciate it as it is. To live with awareness of suffering is also to live with compassion. When we see that every being struggles with pain, loss, and longing, our hearts soften. We no longer judge others harshly, for we recognize their suffering as our own. Compassion becomes a natural response, not from pity, but from solidarity in the human condition. And compassion, far from weakening us, strengthens the mind, for it allows us to meet others with kindness rather than conflict. Buddhist practice offers many tools for working with suffering. Mindfulness teaches us to observe pain without being consumed by it. Meditation cultivates calm and clarity, allowing us to see the impermanent nature of our emotions. Ethical living reduces unnecessary suffering caused by greed, hatred, and delusion. And wisdom, understanding the true nature of reality, cuts through the roots of suffering altogether. One powerful practice is to meditate directly on suffering. Instead of avoiding painful emotions, we sit with them, breathing gently, observing their rise and fall. At first, this may seem unbearable, but gradually we realize that emotions, like all phenomena, are impermanent. Anger burns fiercely, but fades. Grief feels endless, but softens with time. By observing without resistance, we loosen suffering's grip. Another practice is compassion meditation, in which we cultivate the wish that all beings, including ourselves, be free from suffering. This practice expands our perspective beyond self-centered concerns, dissolving the illusion that our suffering is uniquely unbearable. We begin to feel part of a vast network of beings, all striving for peace. This recognition lightens the burden of personal pain. In modern life, where suffering takes new forms, anxiety about the future, loneliness in the midst of digital connection, the pressure of endless achievement, the teaching of dukkha is more relevant than ever. By facing suffering with honesty, we disarm its power. We realize that while circumstances may change, our ability to respond with wisdom and compassion can grow endlessly. Ultimately, the teaching of suffering does not trap us in despair. It points toward freedom. The Buddha did not stop with the recognition of dukkha. He declared that suffering, has an end. When craving and ignorance are uprooted, the mind rests in peace. This is not a distant dream, but a real possibility, demonstrated by countless practitioners who have walked the path. For us, cultivating an unbreakable mind begins here, with the courage to see suffering as it is, without denial or escape. When we no longer run from suffering, we discover that it cannot destroy us. Instead, it becomes a teacher, guiding us to deeper wisdom and greater strength. This is the second great teaching of Buddhism, one that forms the very foundation of liberation. By embracing the reality of dukkha, we prepare ourselves for the journey beyond it, toward a mind unshaken by life's storms. And if you wish to continue learning these profound teachings and walking the path toward resilience and clarity, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we can keep exploring the wisdom that transforms suffering into strength. 3. The practice of non-attachment, letting go. Non-attachment is one of the most misunderstood teachings of Buddhism, and yet it is one of the most liberating. When people first hear the phrase let go or practice non-attachment, they often imagine that it means becoming cold, indifferent, or detached from life. They fear that it demands abandoning love, joy, and passion. But the truth is the opposite. Non-attachment does not mean rejecting life. It means embracing it without clinging. It is not about refusing to love, but about loving with freedom. It is not about avoiding joy, but about experiencing joy without chains. In fact, non-attachment is the very key to enjoying life more deeply because it allows us to live fully in the present without fear of loss or obsession with possession. To understand non-attachment, we must begin with the nature of clinging. The human mind is a machine of attachment. From childhood, we learn to identify with possessions, achievements, roles, and relationships. We cling to our toys, to the praise of parents, to the sense of being loved. As we grow, we cling to success, reputation, money, partners, and dreams. Clinging seems natural because it promises security. Yet, as the Buddha observed, clinging is the root of suffering. Why? Because everything we cling to is impermanent. To cling to what changes is to set ourselves up for disappointment. Think of sand slipping through the fingers. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it escapes. Similarly, the tighter we cling to people, things, or identities, the more quickly they slip away. A parent who clings to their child being forever young suffers when the child grows. A lover who clings to passion being eternal suffers when it changes form. A worker who clings to career success suffers when circumstances shift. The object of clinging is not the problem, the attitude of clinging is. Non-attachment, then, is the art of loosening the grip. It is the ability to hold life lightly, to enjoy without enslaving, to love without chaining, to act without obsession. It does not mean indifference, but balance. It does not mean rejecting life, but relating to it with wisdom. As a lotus grows in muddy water but remains unstained, so the mind that practices non-attachment engages fully with life but is not trapped by it. One of the clearest places where attachment shows itself is in relationships. We often mistake attachment for love. We say, "I cannot live without you," thinking it is the highest expression of devotion. But in truth, it is a declaration of bondage. Genuine love does not imprison the other. It allows them to be free. Attachment says, "You must be mine forever, and if you change or leave, I am destroyed." Love says, "I cherish you as you are, and I am grateful for each moment with you." Attachment clings to permanence in a world where permanence does not exist. Love flows with change, adapting and deepening as life unfolds. Consider how many conflicts in relationships arise from attachment. Jealousy, control, fear, and resentment are born from clinging. We fear losing what we have, so we try to possess the other person. We become anxious when they express independence. We demand that they meet our expectations. But when we release attachment, relationships become lighter, more joyful, and more resilient. We no longer demand that the other fulfill our every need. We simply enjoy the dance of connection. Paradoxically, by letting go, we often deepen intimacy because the other feels free rather than suffocated. Non-attachment also applies to material things. Possessions are not evil, but when we cling to them as the source of identity or happiness, they enslave us. How many people live burdened by debt, stress, or endless striving simply to maintain appearances or accumulate more? The Buddha taught that wealth can be used wisely, but it should never own us. A person practicing non-attachment can enjoy comfort and beauty without being shattered when they fade. They know that possessions are tools, not foundations of identity. Even more subtly, we cling to ideas and opinions. We identify with our beliefs, our political views, our religious traditions. When someone challenges them, we feel personally attacked. Yet all ideas are provisional, shaped by culture, experience, and perspective. Non-attachment to views does not mean rejecting truth, but remaining open, curious, and humble. It allows us to learn and grow rather than becoming rigid and defensive. This flexibility of mind is a hallmark of wisdom. But perhaps the deepest attachment of all is to the self. We cling to the belief that there is a fixed, permanent I at the center of experience. We defend this self, decorate it with achievements, and fear its dissolution in death. Yet Buddhism teaches that the self is not a fixed entity, but a dynamic process, a collection of body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. To cling to the illusion of permanence in this ever-changing process is to suffer. Non-attachment to self does not mean denying existence, but seeing that what we call I is fluid, interconnected, and without inherent solidity. This realization brings profound freedom, for when there is no fixed self to protect, fear lessens and compassion expands. How then can we cultivate non-attachment in daily life? The first step is awareness. We must observe where clinging arises. Do we panic when a loved one is not near? Do we feel despair when possessions are lost? Do we become angry when our opinions are challenged? Each of these is a signal of attachment. With mindfulness, we begin to see the chains we have placed upon ourselves. The second step is practice. Meditation is a powerful tool for loosening attachment. When we sit and watch thoughts arise and fade, we realize that even the mind cannot be clung to. It is a river, not a rock. When we observe the breath, we see that each inhalation and exhalation is a letting go. Through consistent practice, we train ourselves to release rather than grasp. Another practice is generosity. When we give freely, time, resources, love, we weaken the grip of attachment. Generosity reminds us that joy is not found in holding tightly, but in letting go. It is a direct antidote to greed, fear, and clinging. Non-attachment does not mean passivity. It does not mean withdrawing from life. It means engaging fully but wisely. A person of non-attachment works hard, loves deeply, and enjoys beauty, but without demanding permanence. They know that everything changes, and so they flow with change rather than breaking against it. This flexibility makes the mind unbreakable, for nothing can truly be lost when nothing is clung to. Imagine holding a bird in your hand. If you grip too tightly, you harm it. If you open your hand completely, it flies away. Non-attachment is the middle way, holding gently, allowing freedom, savoring the moment without possession. In modern society, where consumerism, obsession, and constant comparison dominate, the practice of non-attachment is revolutionary. It frees us from the endless treadmill of desire. It allows us to step off the cycle of "I must have more" and discover peace in simplicity. It enables us to love without fear, to live without greed, and to face death without terror. The paradox of non-attachment is that by letting go, we gain everything. When we no longer cling, we discover joy in the simplest things. A sunrise, a smile, a moment of stillness. We no longer live enslaved by fear of loss, because we know loss is part of life. We no longer demand that the world conform to our desires because we accept its flow. In this acceptance there is immense peace. An unbreakable mind is not one that refuses to feel, but one that refuses to cling. It knows that emotions, possessions, and identities come and go, but awareness itself remains. It rests in that awareness, calm and free. This is the third great teaching of Buddhism, the practice of non-attachment. It is not a withdrawal from life, but a deeper embrace of it. It is the secret of resilience, compassion, and joy. By learning to let go, we become free. By releasing the chains of clinging, we discover the wings of liberation. And if you want to continue exploring how these timeless teachings can transform your life, bringing you closer to peace and strength, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we can walk this path of wisdom, cultivating an unbreakable mind and a compassionate heart. 4. The middle way. Balance and moderation. The Buddha's life itself is the perfect illustration of the middle way. Before his awakening, Siddhartha Gautama lived two extremes. As a prince, he experienced luxury, indulgence, and every worldly pleasure. Later, as an ascetic seeking truth, he practiced harsh austerities, starving his body and enduring immense physical pain. Yet neither extreme brought him wisdom or peace. One day, weakened almost to death, he realized that truth is not found in the extremes of indulgence or self-denial, but in the balance between them. From that realization arose the middle way, a principle that became the very foundation of Buddhism. The middle way is often misunderstood as compromise or mediocrity, but in reality it is the wisdom of balance. It recognizes that both excess and deficiency lead to suffering, while harmony nurtures freedom. Just as a lute string must not be too tight or too loose to produce music, so the mind must avoid extremes to cultivate clarity and resilience. The middle way is not about avoiding intensity or passion, but about aligning life with balance so that we do not break under strain or collapse into chaos. Why is balance so essential for an unbreakable mind? Because the greatest threats to mental resilience often come from extremes of desire, hatred, work, rest, indulgence, denial. When we are consumed by one side, we become rigid, brittle, and vulnerable to collapse. Balance, on the other hand, creates adaptability. It allows the mind to remain calm amidst change, flexible amidst challenge. Consider the extremes of indulgence and deprivation. To live in indulgence is to be enslaved by desire. A person chasing endless pleasure, food, wealth, entertainment, recognition, becomes restless, never satisfied. The more they obtain, the more they crave. Indulgence may bring temporary joy, but it eventually leads to dissatisfaction, addiction, and emptiness. On the other hand, deprivation, often mistaken for spiritual discipline, can also destroy the mind. Denying all pleasure, rejecting the body's needs, punishing oneself with excessive austerity may create pride, but rarely leads to liberation. Instead, it breeds weakness, arrogance, and despair. The middle way teaches us to honor both body and mind. We eat not too little, not too much. We work not obsessively, not lazily. We speak not harshly, not deceitfully, but truthfully with compassion. We meditate not to escape life nor to control it, but to understand it. In every aspect of life, the middle way asks us to avoid extremes and to cultivate balance. This principle applies not only to spiritual practice, but to every dimension of human life. In relationships, balance is vital. Too much dependence suffocates, too much detachment isolates. A balanced relationship allows both closeness and independence, intimacy and freedom. In work, balance is equally crucial. Overwork leads to exhaustion, while laziness wastes potential. The middle way encourages diligence without obsession, rest without sloth. Even in thought, balance is key. Blind faith closes the mind, while excessive doubt paralyzes it. The middle way fosters open inquiry without cynicism. The middle way also teaches balance between acceptance and effort. Some believe that spiritual practice is only about accepting reality as it is, while others insist it is about striving to transform the self. Buddhism reveals that both are necessary. We must accept the present moment fully, without denial, while also cultivating wholesome qualities like compassion, wisdom, and mindfulness. Too much acceptance without effort leads to complacency. Too much effort without acceptance leads to frustration. The middle way balances both. One of the profound strengths of the middle way is that it adapts to context. It is not a rigid formula, but a principle of harmony. For example, balance in diet may mean different things for different bodies. Balance in work may vary depending on circumstances. The middle way is not about fixed rules, but about wisdom that discerns what is appropriate in each moment. This flexibility itself makes the mind unbreakable, for it can adjust without losing stability. Meditation is a living example of the middle way. Too much effort in concentration creates tension. Too little creates dullness. A skilled meditator learns to balance alertness with relaxation, energy with calm. In this balance, the mind enters clarity and stillness. This same principle extends beyond meditation into daily life. By balancing effort and ease, activity and rest, we cultivate equanimity that withstands turmoil. The middle way also extends to ethics. Many people fall into extremes of moral judgment, either harsh self-condemnation or careless indulgence. But Buddhism encourages a balanced path of ethical conduct rooted in compassion. It is not about rigid rules that crush the spirit, nor about permissiveness that ignores consequences. It is about living in a way that reduces suffering and cultivates harmony. Balance in ethics strengthens the mind by aligning it with integrity. Let us consider how the middle way applies to emotions. Anger, when repressed, festers. When indulged, it destroys. But balanced awareness allows us to feel anger, recognize its message, and transform it into clarity or determination without harm. Similarly, fear, when denied, controls us unconsciously. When indulged, it paralyzes. The middle way teaches us to acknowledge fear, neither denying nor obeying it, but meeting it with mindfulness. This balanced relationship with emotions builds resilience, for we are no longer enslaved by them. Even in joy, balance is essential. If we cling desperately to happiness, we create anxiety about its loss. If we reject joy out of fear of attachment, we create unnecessary suffering. The middle way allows us to savor joy fully while knowing it will pass. In this way, joy becomes pure, not tainted by fear or greed. In modern society, extremes dominate. Consumer culture pushes indulgence, more possessions, more achievement, more stimulation. At the same time, countercultures often push deprivation, rejecting society entirely, embracing harsh minimalism. Both lead to imbalance. The middle way offers an alternative: simplicity without denial, abundance without excess, engagement without obsession. It is not glamorous, but it is deeply liberating. An unbreakable mind requires this balance because rigidity is weakness. A rigid tree snaps in the storm. A flexible tree bends and survives. Similarly, the mind caught in extremes breaks under stress, while the balanced mind adapts and endures. The middle way trains us to bend without breaking, to live in harmony with the flow of life. To practice the middle way, we begin with mindfulness. Each day, we observe where we lean into extremes. Do we overeat or starve ourselves? Do we overwork or neglect our duties? Do we cling to pleasure or reject it entirely? Awareness reveals imbalance. Then we gently adjust, not with harshness but with wisdom. Balance is cultivated step by step, moment by moment. We also cultivate balance through meditation on equanimity. In this practice, we cultivate a mind that remains steady amidst gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. Equanimity is not indifference, but the calm recognition that all conditions are impermanent. It is the fruit of the middle way, and it is the essence of an unbreakable mind. The Buddha once compared his teaching to medicine. Just as a doctor prescribes not too much and not too little of a treatment, but exactly what the patient needs, so the middle way gives each person the balance appropriate to their path. This compassionate moderation prevents harm and fosters healing. In the end, the middle way is not only a path to wisdom, but a path to joy. It frees us from the exhaustion of extremes, from the anxiety of imbalance. It allows us to live with steadiness, to love with openness, to work with purpose, to rest with peace. It is not a compromise, but a liberation, because it aligns us with reality itself. An unbreakable mind is one that does not swing wildly between extremes, but remains steady in balance. It is strong because it is flexible, resilient because it is moderate, free because it avoids the chains of excess. This is the fourth great teaching of Buddhism, the middle way. A path not of mediocrity but of harmony, not of compromise but of liberation. By walking it, we cultivate strength, clarity and peace that no storm can destroy. And if you wish to continue exploring this wisdom, to bring balance into your own life and cultivate a mind that cannot be shaken, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will keep uncovering the teachings that transform life from fragility to resilience. 5. Mindfulness, the path of presence. If impermanence teaches us that all things change, if suffering reveals the truth of human restlessness, if non-attachment trains us to release our grip, and if the middle way guides us into balance, then mindfulness is the practice that weaves all these teachings into daily life. Without mindfulness, the teachings remain ideas. With mindfulness, they become lived experience. Mindfulness is not merely a technique, but a way of being, a quality of presence that transforms how we see ourselves and the world. It is the art of truly being here, now, with full awareness and without judgment. At its simplest, mindfulness means paying attention to the present moment. It is noticing the breath as it enters and leaves the body, the sensations that arise in each step, the feelings that ripple through the heart, the thoughts that pass across the mind. But mindfulness is not just attention. It is attention infused with clarity and acceptance. It is seeing reality as it is, not as we want it to be. It is being present without clinging, resisting, or escaping. Why is mindfulness so powerful for cultivating an unbreakable mind? Because the mind that is present is the mind that cannot be overwhelmed. Most of our suffering does not arise from the present moment itself, but from the stories we tell about it. We replay the past, we worry about the future, we resist what is happening now. The present moment, when seen clearly, is often bearable, even beautiful. But when we abandon it for regret or anxiety, we create suffering that need not exist. Mindfulness anchors us in the reality of now, dissolving the illusions that fuel suffering. Consider how often we live in distraction. We eat without tasting, walk without noticing, speak without listening, breathe without awareness. Our days pass in a blur of autopilot, driven by habits, worries, and endless mental chatter. In this state, life slips through our fingers. We may achieve much, yet we feel empty, because we were never truly present for our own existence. Mindfulness restores us to life. It allows us to inhabit each moment fully, to wake up from the trance of distraction, to discover depth in what seemed ordinary. In meditation, mindfulness is cultivated systematically. We sit, close our eyes, and bring attention to the breath. At first, the mind wanders constantly, chasing memories, worries, fantasies. But with gentle persistence, we keep returning to the breath, like a bird returning to its perch. Slowly the mind settles, clarity arises, and we begin to see thoughts not as commands, but as passing events. We discover that we are not enslaved to the stream of thinking. We can observe it without drowning. This realization alone is revolutionary, for it breaks the chain of reactivity that governs much of life. But mindfulness is not confined to meditation. The Buddha emphasized mindfulness in all activities: walking, eating, speaking, working, resting. To walk mindfully is to feel each step, to notice the contact with the earth, to be fully present in the act of moving. To eat mindfully is to taste each bite, to be aware of hunger and satisfaction, to appreciate nourishment. To speak mindfully is to choose words with awareness, neither careless nor harmful. Mindfulness infuses life with presence, transforming routine into sacred practice. Mindfulness also transforms our relationship with emotions. Ordinarily, when anger arises, we react, shouting, blaming, suppressing. When fear arises, we run or freeze. When sadness arises, we drown in it or deny it. But with mindfulness, we observe emotions as they are. We notice anger as heat in the body, tightness in the chest, thoughts of blame. We notice fear as a racing heart, shallow breath, images of danger. We notice sadness as heaviness, tears, longing. Instead of being consumed, we become witnesses. In witnessing, we create space, and in that space lies freedom. Emotions still come, but they no longer break us. The practice of mindfulness also reveals impermanence directly. In meditation, we watch sensations arise and pass. Thoughts come and go, feelings appear and dissolve. We see that nothing lasts. This insight, lived rather than merely believed, erodes clinging. We stop demanding permanence because we see, moment by moment, that all things change. Mindfulness thus becomes a bridge to wisdom. One of the most profound gifts of mindfulness is equanimity, the ability to remain steady amidst pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame. When mindful, we do not cling desperately to pleasure, nor do we collapse under pain. We observe both as passing experiences, neither permanent nor defining. This equanimity is the very essence of an unbreakable mind. It does not mean apathy. It means freedom from slavery to conditions. In modern life, mindfulness has become popular, sometimes reduced to a technique for stress reduction. While it certainly reduces stress, its depth is far greater. Mindfulness is not just about calming the mind, but about transforming it. It is not about escaping life's problems, but about meeting them with clarity and compassion. To practice mindfulness is to live awake, not asleep. Science has confirmed what practitioners have known for centuries. Mindfulness changes the brain. Studies show that regular mindfulness practice strengthens regions associated with attention, compassion, and emotional regulation. It reduces activity in the default mode network, the system of wandering thought tied to rumination and anxiety. In this way, mindfulness literally rewires the mind toward resilience. Yet beyond science, the true power of mindfulness is experiential. Only by practicing it do we taste its liberation. Imagine a person facing crisis, a diagnosis, a loss, a betrayal. Without mindfulness, the mind spirals into panic. This should not be happening. I cannot survive this. My life is ruined. With mindfulness, the same person breathes, observes, and sees. This is pain. This is fear. This is change. The circumstances remain difficult, but the suffering lessens because the mind no longer adds resistance. The unbreakable mind is not the mind that avoids crisis, but the mind that meets it with presence. Mindfulness also deepens compassion. When we are present to our own suffering without judgment, we become more present to the suffering of others. We see them not as obstacles or roles, but as beings with fears, hopes, and pain. Mindful listening, mindful speech, mindful action all nurture compassion. Compassion in turn strengthens mindfulness, for it anchors us in care rather than self-absorption. In practice, mindfulness begins with small steps. One breath noticed, one meal eaten slowly, one conversation truly heard. From these moments, presence grows. The more we practice, the more mindfulness permeates daily life. Eventually, even challenges become opportunities to practice presence. Traffic, illness, conflict, all become teachers reminding us to return to now. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is the direct path to awakening. It reveals the nature of reality, impermanence, suffering, non-self. It cuts through illusion, dismantles clinging and awakens compassion. It is not only a practice, but a way of living with full awareness. To cultivate mindfulness is to cultivate freedom. For those seeking an unbreakable mind, mindfulness is indispensable. It anchors us in the present, shields us from the illusions of past and future, frees us from automatic reactivity, reveals impermanence, deepens compassion, and cultivates equanimity. It is both the path and the fruit. This is the fifth great teaching of Buddhism, mindfulness, the path of presence. It is not something exotic or distant, but available in every moment. Right now, as you read these words, you can pause, breathe, and be aware. That is mindfulness, and with each act of awareness, the mind grows stronger, calmer, more resilient. If you wish to continue walking this path, exploring the wisdom that makes the mind unshakable, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will deepen our practice of mindfulness and uncover the timeless teachings that transform ordinary life into a journey of awakening. 6. Compassion, the heart of strength. If mindfulness is the art of presence, then compassion is the art of connection. In Buddhist teaching, the unbreakable mind is not built on cold detachment or stoic isolation, but on the warmth of compassion, a quality that opens the heart to the suffering of others and transforms that recognition into a force for healing. Compassion, far from making the mind weak, is the very essence of its strength. For a mind without compassion is brittle, prone to anger, hatred, and fear, while a mind filled with compassion is vast, resilient, and indestructible. At its core, compassion means to suffer with, to feel another's pain as one's own, and to respond with the wish to alleviate it. It is not pity which looks down from above, but solidarity which stands side by side. It is not mere sentiment, but an active force that moves us to kindness, generosity, and service. In Buddhism, compassion, karuna, is inseparable from wisdom. Wisdom sees the truth of suffering, compassion responds with love. Together, they form the twin wings of awakening. Why is compassion so essential for an unbreakable mind? Because much of human suffering arises not from external events, but from the poisons of the heart: hatred, greed, jealousy, and fear. These poisons corrode the mind, weaken resilience, and create conflict. Compassion is the antidote. When compassion fills the heart, hatred dissolves, greed softens, fear lessens. A compassionate mind cannot be easily broken, for it is rooted not in self-centered desire, but in connection with life itself. Consider how anger functions. When insulted, betrayed, or harmed, the natural reaction is anger, a fire that consumes both victim and perpetrator. Anger may feel like strength, but it weakens the mind, enslaving it to reactivity. Compassion, however, transforms anger into understanding. It does not excuse harm, but seeks to see the suffering behind harmful actions. It recognizes that those who hurt are often themselves hurt, that cruelty often arises from ignorance and pain. By seeing this, compassion releases the grip of anger. The mind becomes free, not enslaved. Compassion also transforms fear. Fear isolates, makes us see others as threats, builds walls around the heart. Compassion dissolves those walls, reminding us that others, like ourselves, long for safety, love, and peace. When we see others not as enemies but as fellow travelers in suffering, fear lessens. We discover that connection, not isolation, is the path to security. In daily life, compassion is practiced in countless ways, through kind words, patient listening, gentle acts of generosity. Yet its foundation is the inner cultivation of empathy. In meditation, we practice metta bhavana, loving-kindness meditation, where we silently repeat wishes for ourselves and others. May I be safe, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering. Then we extend these wishes outward, to loved ones, to strangers, to difficult people, and finally to all beings. At first, the practice may feel artificial, but gradually it reshapes the heart. Compassion grows as naturally as a tree grows toward the sun. But compassion is not only for others, it must begin with oneself. Many people live with harsh self-judgment, criticizing every mistake, carrying guilt like chains. Without compassion for oneself, the heart remains closed. Self-compassion does not mean indulgence or excuses. It means recognizing one's own suffering and responding with kindness. When we can sit with our pain without judgment, when we can forgive ourselves, we open the door to forgiving others. The unbreakable mind is compassionate first toward itself, then toward the world. Compassion also deepens resilience because it shifts the focus from why me to how can I help. In suffering, self-pity weakens us, but compassion turns pain into purpose. Countless people have endured tragedy and emerged stronger because they transformed their suffering into service, creating charities, supporting communities, comforting others. Compassion turns wounds into wisdom, scars into strength. In Buddhism, compassion is not optional but central. The Bodhisattva ideal embodies this: beings who vow not to enter final liberation until all beings are free from suffering. This vow is not seen as a burden, but as the highest expression of freedom. For when the heart is vast enough to hold the suffering of the world, nothing can break it. In practical life, compassion can be applied in small, everyday ways. When someone speaks harshly, instead of reacting, we pause and ask, what pain might they be carrying? When we see someone struggling, instead of ignoring, we offer help, however small. When we encounter differences, instead of judging, we seek to understand. Each act of compassion strengthens the mind by aligning it with love rather than hatred. Compassion also has a profound effect on health and well-being. Studies show that compassion reduces stress, boosts immune function, and increases life satisfaction. But beyond science, compassion enriches life by giving it meaning. Without compassion, life may be comfortable but empty. With compassion, even challenges become purposeful. Yet compassion requires courage. To open the heart to suffering is to risk feeling pain. Many avoid compassion for fear of being overwhelmed, but true compassion is not drowning in suffering, it is touching it with wisdom. It feels the pain of others, but does not collapse under it, because it recognizes impermanence and interconnectedness. Compassion does not break the heart, it enlarges it. The unbreakable mind is compassionate because it is vast. It does not shrink from pain, but embraces it with love. It does not close in self-protection, but opens in solidarity. It is strong not because it is hard, but because it is soft in the deepest sense. Like water, it yields yet endures, wears down stone, and nourishes life. In a world marked by division, violence, and fear, compassion is revolutionary. It challenges the culture of indifference, greed, and domination. It heals wounds that laws and systems cannot reach. It creates bridges where walls have been built. It is the seed of peace in families, communities, and nations. This is the sixth great teaching of Buddhism, compassion. It is not weakness, but the deepest strength. It is not sentiment, but transformation. To cultivate compassion is to cultivate an unbreakable mind and a boundless heart. And if you wish to continue walking this path, learning how compassion, together with wisdom, can transform suffering into resilience and build a life of peace, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will keep uncovering the timeless teachings that guide us toward awakening. 7. Wisdom, the vision of reality. All the teachings of Buddhism, impermanence, suffering, non-attachment, the middle way, mindfulness, and compassion converge into one supreme quality, wisdom. In Buddhist tradition, wisdom, prajna, is not simply intellectual knowledge or philosophical speculation. It is direct insight into the true nature of reality, an insight that liberates the mind from ignorance, illusion, and bondage. Wisdom is the clear seeing that penetrates beneath appearances, revealing things as they are. To cultivate wisdom is to awaken from the dream of delusion and to live with unshakable clarity. Wisdom is often symbolized as the eye of awakening, the vision that perceives truth without distortion. But what truth does wisdom see? At its heart, wisdom perceives three marks of existence: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. It sees that all conditioned things arise and pass, that clinging to them brings dissatisfaction, and that the self we cling to is not a fixed entity, but a fluid process. This vision does not remain abstract. It transforms how we live. Once we see reality clearly, we can no longer be enslaved by illusions. Consider how ignorance binds the mind. Most people live in the illusion of permanence, believing that possessions, relationships, and identities will last forever. They live in the illusion of self, believing in an independent I that can control everything. They live in the illusion of satisfaction, believing that pleasure and success will finally complete them. These illusions create endless craving, fear, and disappointment. Wisdom shatters these illusions. It shows that impermanence is the nature of all things, that the self is interdependent and empty of solidity, that clinging never brings fulfillment. With this seeing, the mind is freed. Wisdom does not mean rejecting the world, but understanding it. When we see impermanence clearly, we stop clinging. When we see non-self, we stop defending ego. When we see suffering, we stop being surprised by it and begin to transcend it. Wisdom transforms how we meet every experience, yet wisdom is not cold detachment. In Buddhism, wisdom is inseparable from compassion. To see clearly is to recognize the suffering of all beings and to respond with care. A person who claims wisdom without compassion has only partial understanding. True wisdom sees that all beings are interconnected, that harming others harms oneself, that love and kindness are the natural fruit of insight. How is wisdom cultivated? The Buddha taught that it arises from three foundations: hearing the truth, reflecting on it, and directly experiencing it. First, we listen or read teachings that point to reality. Second, we contemplate them deeply, questioning and testing them. Third, and most important, we practice through meditation, mindfulness, and ethical living so that insight arises in direct experience. Wisdom is not borrowed from books, it is discovered in life. Meditation plays a central role in cultivating wisdom. In deep mindfulness, we observe phenomena arising and passing, sensations, thoughts, emotions, perceptions. We see directly that nothing is permanent. We see that clinging brings suffering. We see that what we call self is just a stream of changing processes with no fixed core. These are not philosophical conclusions, but lived realities, tasted in silence. Such direct seeing transforms the mind far more than intellectual belief. Wisdom also grows through ethical living. When we live with honesty, compassion, and mindfulness, the mind becomes clear, less clouded by guilt, greed, or hatred. A clear mind can see reality more accurately. Ethics, meditation, and wisdom form a circle. Ethical conduct supports meditation, meditation deepens wisdom, and wisdom strengthens ethics. Together, they form the path to liberation. What does wisdom look like in daily life? It looks like equanimity in the face of change. When success comes, wisdom enjoys it without clinging. When failure comes, wisdom accepts it without despair. It looks like humility, knowing that opinions are limited and truth is vast. It looks like compassion, seeing the pain of others as one's own. It looks like freedom, living without the constant drive for more, without fear of loss, without slavery to ego. Wisdom also means seeing interdependence. We realize that nothing exists in isolation, that our lives depend on countless causes and conditions: the earth that grows our food, the workers who harvest it, the ancestors who gave us language, the teachers who guided us. This insight dissolves arrogance and fosters gratitude. It also nurtures responsibility, for when we see that we are interconnected, we understand that our actions ripple outward, affecting countless lives. With wisdom, we act more carefully, more compassionately, more sustainably. In times of crisis, wisdom is the anchor of the unbreakable mind. When others panic, wisdom remains steady, seeing that all conditions are impermanent. When others cling to blame, wisdom sees the complexity of causes. When others collapse under suffering, wisdom recognizes that pain is universal and can be transcended. Wisdom does not eliminate difficulty, but transforms how we relate to it. The Buddha himself described wisdom as the greatest wealth. Gold and possessions can be stolen, power can be lost, beauty fades. But wisdom, once cultivated, remains unshakable. It cannot be taken away, for it is not external, but an inner awakening. Wisdom is the light that dispels the darkness of ignorance, the medicine that heals the disease of suffering, the sword that cuts the chains of delusion. In modern times, wisdom is more essential than ever. Surrounded by noise, misinformation, consumerism, and distraction, people mistake knowledge for wisdom. Knowledge accumulates facts, wisdom understands meaning. Knowledge builds machines, wisdom asks how to use them well. Knowledge may dominate nature, wisdom lives in harmony with it. Without wisdom, knowledge becomes dangerous. With wisdom, knowledge serves life. An unbreakable mind in the 21st century requires not just information, but wisdom. The clarity to see through illusion, the humility to recognize limits, and the compassion to act with care. Wisdom also helps us face death, the greatest challenge of impermanence. Most fear death because they cling to the illusion of a permanent self. Wisdom sees that death is not annihilation, but transformation, the continuation of conditions, the unfolding of causes and effects. By understanding non-self, we loosen fear. Death remains a mystery, but it no longer breaks the mind, for wisdom accepts it as part of the natural flow. This is the seventh great teaching of Buddhism, wisdom, the vision of reality. It is not abstract or distant, but practical and liberating. To cultivate wisdom is to cultivate freedom, clarity, and peace. It is to see life as it is, and to live without chains. The unbreakable mind is wise because it sees truth. It does not collapse under illusion. It does not cling to what changes. It does not fear what is natural. It lives with clarity, compassion, and courage. Wisdom is the crown of all the teachings, the fruit of the path, the light that guides us home. And if you wish to continue deepening your understanding of these timeless teachings, to cultivate wisdom alongside mindfulness, compassion, and balance, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will keep exploring the insights that awaken the heart, strengthen the mind, and lead to true freedom. The journey through the 7 great teachings of Buddhism has not been a collection of abstract ideas, but a map for transforming life itself. Each teaching is a piece of a greater whole, and together they form a path that can guide anyone, whether monk, seeker, or ordinary person in the modern world, toward an unbreakable mind and an awakened heart. We began with impermanence, the recognition that all things change. This teaching alone, if fully understood, has the power to free us from endless clinging and despair. It shows us that suffering passes, that joy must be cherished, that nothing is fixed. Impermanence trains us in resilience, teaching us to flow with life rather than break against it. From there, we face the truth of suffering. Instead of denying or escaping it, we look directly at the nature of dukkha, seeing that dissatisfaction pervades existence when we cling to illusions. This truth, far from pessimistic, is compassionate because it opens the door to liberation. To know suffering is to begin to transcend it. We then turned to non-attachment, the practice of letting go. Here we discovered that freedom does not mean refusing to love, but loving without chains. It does not mean rejecting joy, but enjoying without clinging. Non-attachment teaches us that the strongest hands are the ones that can release, not the ones that clutch desperately. The middle way then revealed itself as the wisdom of balance, steering us away from extremes of indulgence and denial. It showed us that strength lies in harmony, that resilience lies in flexibility, that the mind at peace is the mind that lives in moderation. This principle, like the perfectly tuned string of a lute, resonates with clarity in every part of life. With mindfulness, we entered the heart of presence. We discovered that most suffering arises not from the moment itself, but from our wandering into past and future. By returning to now, we reclaimed life. Mindfulness taught us to breathe, to observe, to witness without judgment. It gave us equanimity, the calm strength of the unbreakable mind. Then came compassion, the force that makes wisdom alive. Compassion expanded our circle of care, dissolving hatred and fear, transforming pain into connection. It reminded us that an unbreakable mind is not cold, but warm, not isolated, but deeply connected. Compassion is the heart of strength, the power that turns wounds into healing. Finally, wisdom crowned the path. It revealed the vision of reality, impermanence, suffering, and non-self. It shattered illusions and freed us from ignorance. With wisdom, we see clearly. With compassion, we act kindly. With mindfulness, we live fully. Wisdom unites the teachings into a single truth, that freedom is possible here and now, in this very life. Together, these 7 teachings are not steps to climb once and discard, but qualities to cultivate continually. They are a circle, each reinforcing the other. Impermanence teaches gratitude. Suffering teaches courage. Non-attachment teaches freedom. The middle way teaches balance. Mindfulness teaches presence. Compassion teaches love. Wisdom teaches clarity. When all are lived together, the mind becomes unshakable, like a mountain grounded in the earth, like an ocean vast and calm, like the sky clear and boundless. An unbreakable mind does not mean a life without pain or challenge. Storms still come, losses still happen, difficulties still arise. But the unbreakable mind meets them with resilience, with presence, with compassion, with wisdom. It bends but does not break. It feels but does not collapse. It loves but does not cling. It sees but does not fear. It is the mind of awakening, the mind that lives in harmony with truth. And now, as we close this journey through the 7 teachings, the invitation is simple. Do not let these teachings remain only as words. Live them, practice them in the ordinary rhythms of your day, when you wake, when you work, when you love, when you suffer. Let impermanence teach you gratitude. Let suffering teach you strength. Let non-attachment teach you freedom. Let the middle way teach you balance. Let mindfulness teach you presence. Let compassion teach you love. Let wisdom teach you clarity. In living them, you will discover that the unbreakable mind is not a distant goal, but a reality you can cultivate here and now. And if you wish to continue exploring these timeless teachings to deepen your understanding and strengthen your practice, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Together, we will keep walking this path, step by step, breath by breath, toward a life of clarity, compassion, and unshakable peace.